just some little card of information. A couple of the residents have good ideas on the content, and we can work with staff to get that over to you. Some of the other things that have already been reported were we noticed on 58th Street when we were walking, a couple of the Pepco lights were out, and I did get confirmation Pepco is aware. They did get notified by Public Works, so those kinds of things are in progress. However, along 58th Avenue close to Emerson Street, and then on 57th close to Emerson Street at those bus stops, when the sun goes down, there's no lighting there. And we saw residents sitting there in the dark waiting on the bus to come, and that is just not safe. So if we could think about some solutions to provide some lighting there. I know specifically on 57th, we have the grant that is going to allow us to add additional lighting along 57. So if that could be a temporary solution, I think for the safety of residents, it's worth doing something temporary, particularly because our days are getting shorter on both ends, morning and afternoon. So we really do want to be proactive in public safety and not wait, for something to happen. A couple of other notes were we identified a few streets where there's 2 stop signs and not 4, and we witnessed people speeding past as we were walking, and this is in Ward 1. So I can email those intersections to you, Mr. McGrory. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer, so there could be valid reasons why there aren't 4-way stops in specific areas versus 4-way stops in others, but wanted to make sure I reported back on that. But Chief, I know you have been out with this, and Councilmember Rout or Lundy, any other comments or additions to observations that you saw?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we did have an opportunity to walk, as the mayor said, and I really appreciated meeting a few of our residents on the walk. And these residents we met, they didn't have any major concerns, but they were open to stop and chat with us, so that was good. And we did have other residents to walk, who were part of the Neighborhood Watch team, so it was wonderful to have our officer, Chief, there with us to protect us. But I think this is a good initiative, and we really want to encourage the residents to come out and participate as well. And forgive me if I didn't say good evening as a part of the protocols. Good evening to all the residents and everyone watching. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for those observations. Councilmember Rout, anything before I go to the Chief?
Thank you, Mayor James. I want to thank Chief Covington as well. I felt really safe because he had a gun and he knew what to look for. But in the event that residents are going out by themselves, understanding the dark spaces, I would recommend that we provide our neighborhood watch with adequate lighting, like flashlights, and the flashlights that you could protect yourself with just in case something happens, because I'm just being real. It was real dark. I was fearful a couple of times, and we had Chief Collins and he was like, y'all are gonna be okay, and I felt we were okay. But in the event that our teams are going out by themselves, some may be women, some may be elderly, we just want to remain vigilant, and because some people are vulnerable, that vulnerable population. And Mayor James and Councilwoman Lundy, you guys had the best. And I do think, although we have those bright orange, bright t-shirts, there's nothing reflective. So either some reflective tape that we could put on the shirt, just to put it on there, or an actual vest, maybe not the full one, maybe the half one, something reflective, so that, because those cars were speeding very fast up those roads. So, but I do want to encourage, if you see something, say something, and it's really going to take our community to come together to join forces with our public safety officers, because they can't be everywhere every second of the day. For example, if they're across the street or, responding to something at 7-Eleven and they get a call in Ward 2, it's going to take them some travel time to actually get there. And so, we just have to keep our eyes and ears open and assist them assist us.
Thank you, Councilmember Rao. And I know Chief and I talked, we were discussing ordering the flashlights as well as the vests so that when people are crossing the street, like you said, it's brighter than the orange shirt and reflective. So I know Chief and I had mentioned that. And there was something else we discussed. I think it was the whistles. Mm-hmm. And you were saying you could provide those too. We need to make noise if something goes wrong. And then just so the public is aware, you do not have to go out and walk to be a part of Neighborhood Watch. We have residents who they have mobility issues. However, they sit by the window and they see everything that goes on in their block. You're a perfect candidate because you can report out on what is going on that's not right. You can give descriptions, tag numbers, the whole 9 yards. And then for those who are able to go out and walk, we do go typically in teams. As I mentioned, the one resident is really gung-ho. He and his wife, they take their walk together and they observe what's happening in the neighborhood. That's the kind of activity we want. But you do have to remember, if you are a part of the team, we have a training we ask you to go through first. So please don't go out on your own telling folks you're part of Neighborhood Watch if you have not sat with Chief Collington and been trained. So there are some things that you need to do before you start taking it to the streets. So with that, Chief, did you want to add anything?
Good evening, everyone, Mayor, Council, residents, colleagues. I think all of those points were valid and very good information to share with the residents. I just would add just a small piece that you can get your exercise on. You can meet your new neighbors. You can just have discussions going back and forth. And this is what we do. We use these opportunities to bring each other back together. But the biggest part is we want to stress that we just want our Neighborhood Watch team just to be that extra set of eyes. We do not expect our Neighborhood Watch team to engage anyone. We're there to deter, detect, and report. And that's all we ask our residents to do. But, I can say the walks that we've been on, I've even seen a lot of, things out there that I didn't see driving. Just when you're out there walking, it just gives you a different perspective of what you see out there. And I just want to encourage more residents to come out and join us while we out here walking, because it takes a whole community to keep us safe. Not just public safety, not firefighters, it takes everyone to play a part in keeping the community safe and thriving. And then those issues that we mentioned, especially like those bus stops. I will have a conversation with like Metro. I just don't understand why the bus stops don't have any type of lighting inside of them. Even if I was driving the bus, you can miss somebody sitting in the bus stop because it was just, some of those spots were just so dark. So just some of those things now that we do see when we out there walking. And I think that the residents are seeing us because we got, as Councilmember Lundy said, a lot of residents were like, they're curious, like, what are you guys doing? And when we just stopped and had that small conversation with them, I was standing out front the other day, and one of the residents came down and said he had just submitted his information, the older gentleman. He said, Chief, I'm coming. I just turned my information in. So I said, good, we're waiting on you. So, the word is getting out, and we're just looking for the team to grow and just come out and have a good time. I mean, if you're talking about keeping them moving, getting your steps in, meeting your neighbors, that's what it's about, unity in the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief. Totally agree. So that completes old business. We're now
Mayor,
up to,
can I
yes.
interject?
Oh, sure.
So we got a ping from WebEx. Tony Ruffin and Barbara Gonzalez are on the line from Pepco. And they were standing by. They've got another presentation at 7:30. So they could present at the 7 o'clock meeting, or if the council doesn't feel that's necessary, we could excuse them. I just defer to whatever it is you wanted.
Yeah, thank you. I just saw his text message and let him know we were good because he did mention they had a 7:30. Unless the council, I know we saw the presentation before. Do you all feel you need to see it again at the 7 o'clock meeting? We're at the point where we can vote. Okay, yeah, we're good. Thank you. So, again, that takes care of old business. We're up to new business and wanted to let the community know that there is a wonderful candidate who seems like would be a good fit for the appointment of the town clerk. At this time, Mr. McGroy, I'll turn it over to you. I know you extended an offer, but just so you can inform everyone of where you are in the process.
Thank you. We've conveyed an offer to the candidate. The candidate is someone very familiar with the area, but is currently out of state. So I've been back and forth with the candidate on prospective start date, and I think they're trying to figure out the move. At the open meeting, I'm hoping for an update on my cell phone, and by the open meeting, I would invite a motion from the council to approve the specific named candidate so that we could proceed with the background, and you could make your motion, if you're willing to do it, contingent on a successful background screening, and then we could initiate the background screening. And the last step of that process would be consulting with this candidate's current employer, which obviously they wouldn't want to do until they had a firm offer in hand. And since this is a council appointment, we'd like to have the council's blessing to move forward, lest this be further delayed. So that's up to the council. I'll conclude there.
Great. Any questions for Mr. McGrory?
Yes. So that was quick, which was good because we did ask you to do that because considering that we haven't had a town clerk, in a minute, and so definitely do appreciate you doing that as expeditiously as you did. And I did have an opportunity to look at the young lady's resume. I did request a copy from the mayor, and she was able to get that to me. So my only concern is there's some things that were mentioned that were not mentioned in the candidate's resume, and also that I would have liked to have had an opportunity to have a conversation with the candidate or interview the candidate. I don't know if that's still possible because you said you have extended an offer to the candidate, which is okay. I guess you extended an offer to the candidate. But so I just wanted to ask if it was possible for the council. I don't know if any of the other council members had an opportunity to interview the candidate. Was it just yourself, or what was the process?
So I'll just overview the process if I could. So I was handed off some resumes upon my arrival and have been in conversations with some of the leading candidates, especially those who have municipal government experience. So there was a very small subset for which that was the case.
Okay.
And had been in dialogue with several candidates who met that basic criteria, had some preliminary conversations with a couple of them, had a detailed interview with the candidate that I'm recommending. And again, I'm trying to be very discreet and not reveal any of the details about this candidate because we could talk about this in more detail in a closed personnel session, which would be appropriate. But my understanding of my role in the process is that the town administrator is to make a recommendation to the mayor and council for a department head. And so the mayor would then make the appointment subject to the approval of the council. So that requires a majority vote of the council. And I feel like my work is done. I've made a contingent offer, and the contingencies are as follows. Mutually agreed start date, which I anticipated would be October, sometime during October given the relocation necessity, and the approval of the council. That's the second contingency, one which I cannot control, but you can. And the third is a satisfactory background check. So again, if the council's interested in moving this forward at its most expeditious pace, you could take a contingent vote with whatever terms and conditions you wish tonight or at any time in the future. But I have done what I hope was the task set before me.
I have a follow-up. I'm not trying to hog. I know my colleagues may have questions.
Sure, go ahead, Councilmember Lundy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, out of the set of group of people that you looked at, how many candidates did you narrow it down to? How many did you have on the table? That's what I'm trying.
I narrowed it down to 3 candidates with extensive municipal experience. Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lundy. And as part of the process too, I think it would be appropriate if we could just, if the council's open to doing the vote tonight, but still as part of the contingency is a conversation, obviously virtually, but with whichever members of the council would be available and open, to have that opportunity. Councilmember Rod, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Mayor James. I also have I received some information that members of the council were able to participate in the interview process. And because that was offered to a member or members of the town council, that should have been open to all members of the town council. After reviewing the candidate's resume that was sent to me via email in the packet recently, I too would like to interview the candidate because I am an equal member of this council and I would like to understand what was discussed as well. So if that is an interview, a meeting, a conversation, however we want to label it, I think that is all fair because I have some concerns with, and I shared with one of my colleagues that I spoke with as it relates to a couple things, not to get into the details of this candidate, but I did share this in a telephone conversation with one of my colleagues as it relates to just preliminary information I received during that time, and not taking anything away from you as the town administrator, but I want to operate in good faith and have a good faith effort moving forward that I am voting in confidence for a candidate that I feel strongly, and based on the information received, I do not feel strongly. So I would like that opportunity. In addition, I'm not comfortable with taking a vote tonight because of that information, and I would like to suggest that the other two candidates are also interviewed, or let's let them know we have a strong candidate. This is our first choice. We want to extend the opportunity for you to interview with the interview panel, and just let them know up front and give them the opportunity. But with background checks, as I shared with my colleague and that we spoke about in preparation, that things happen. We're in the middle of COVID. Life happens, things happen, and we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket just in one candidate. And if you have three, what's the hurt of interviewing three? Go back.
Great, thank you. So, Mr. McGrory, it sounds like we need to have a separate meeting. It may need to be a closed session to talk about the process more in depth. And at that time, sure, the candidates will have to convene to figure that out and go from there. But to be clear, Mr. McGrory did invite me to sit in because I have to make the appointment. I can't make it if I don't know who that person is. So full transparency, that individual was me. But I understand that everyone wants to be a part of the process, so we'll go back to the drawing board. The offer is out, so let's just figure out next steps. The next item on the agenda is from Councilmember Blunt. This is the Port Towns Transportation Agreement that we received.
Well, actually, I don't think we totally figuring out what we're going to do with transportation at this time. We'll have a meeting and discuss what you all like. Me and Mr. Bob McGrory, I'm town administrator. We have talked back and forth on if we really want to carry on with the transportation at this point because of the cost, and look at another avenue with the transportation. We know that the transportation is needed for our seniors. We know that, but the amount is too much. The amount is too much. It's causing $122 just to go to Walmart. So right now we still up in the air, but we thinking about discontinuing the bus. So with that, Bob, you can finish if you talk to Evans about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Councilmember Blunt. So in some of our preliminary discussions, I guess, and again, I'm new to this process, but there is a Port Towns Transportation Subcommittee that has had some discussions. I had follow-up discussions with the lead agency, Colmer Manor, and their treasurer, and got a copy of the operating agreement and the basic terms of service. And in reviewing the bills, it's my recommendation, and we had talked about this, if the council sees fit to do that, and I did telegraph this to Mr. Baden of Colmore Manor, that this was going to be my recommendation so that he wouldn't be surprised. And let me preface this by saying that 2 other jurisdictions in the Port Towns have already withdrawn from the program.
Yes.
Their ridership was so low to nil that they both did not feel this was a practical use of their funds to support the operating costs. And much of the overhead cost, from what I'm told, is based on the high cost of maintaining the 2 aging buses. And there are staff costs. So after a dialogue with Mr. Baden, I did say, it was likely to be my recommendation that the town of Bladensburg send them a 30 days notice of our intent to discontinue the program. And that would give them time to communicate with their staff and manage the program as they see fit, because they are their own staff. That 30-day window is envisioned in the agreement, and Mr. Baden thought that would be a courteous way to extricate ourselves. And I would frame this, and can do so in proposing a motion for your open meeting, your regular meeting, as a pause in the service, that you are formally discontinuing, giving 30 days notice under this operating agreement, but really what you want to do is a pause in this service till we can regroup and figure out how to move forward. So would that...
Yeah, if we can pause it. I don't really want to say let's stop, because we might find a better way that we can get that cost down. So, and they might come back in. But at this point, pause.
Yeah,
Pause
but I think if I could just piggyback on that, so contractually, though, you would have to assert that you want to discontinue it. And I think in the covering note, I would say, the town is certainly not closed to this service permanently, but for the purposes of this agreement, we want to formalize our intent to discontinue the process. So I
Right,
think,
and just to follow up, because you mentioned 30 days, but per the agreement, if you put money in the budget, in the line item, you have to provide 90 days notice.
Oh, you do.
So I think you're right, if we pause it, that could give us some wiggle room, so we don't have to do 90-day notice and continue paying into this knowing how expensive it is. So I think that was a good call. Councilmember Rao, and then I saw Councilmember Lundy's hand.
So I'm confused now that you brought that up, because I read that clause in there about the 90 days notice, because we did put it in our budget. So does that mean if we pause it, that's our 90 days notice?
No, if we're canceling, if we're saying, like the other municipalities, we're not participating, moving forward, we're completely withdrawing, we have to provide 90 days. In this instance, we're saying, we're putting, and tell me if I'm saying this right, Councilmember Blunt, but we're saying we need to pause, reevaluate, and figure out a better way to come up with transportation services for our residents. And until such time, we cannot continue. And as she said, she wants to make it affordable, so perhaps the other 2 communities will come back on board. That's what I heard, but tell me if I got it right.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
So I have a suggestion.
Sure, Councilmember Rao.
So I'm in favor of that. We pause it, go through the drawing board, come up with procedurally what it would look like. When will this transportation go? Where will it go? Estimate the cost, bring it back in. Also at MML, I was talking to a couple other municipalities. MML is really great. Thank you for sending me town. I just want to put that little plug in there. But MML was really great. I had the opportunity to talk about these transportation issues in similar municipalities across the entire state. So they talked about, like, Uber has this thing where the town can set up an account, right? Just hear me out. The town can set up an account and put a cap or a max on the amount of funding that goes towards this thing with a special code. So let's use Councilmember Blunt for an example. Going to pick on you for a little bit, hope you don't mind. So Councilmember Blunt is giving Bladensburg 21 as her code. And in her code, that's the code that she puts when she calls her Uber. She only has a $10 or $15, she only has a $15 credit that she is used for that particular Uber account with that particular code, and it's set up by per person. If she goes over $15, it charges Councilmember Blunt. But the town is only responsible for paying $15 for that resident, and then you can cap it so that with that one account, they're geo-filtered within the app, can only recommend and lock in that you can only use this code per Uber account twice a month. So when we are pausing, we have another option that we could swing residents to that may or may not be savvy with Uber. But I think that's another way that we can still meet residents' needs with our allocated budget that we already have for it, and be able to shift the costs. And then the other municipality that I was speaking with, they use some of these as emergency COVID mitigation funds for the purposes of getting to doctor's appointments, for testing or things of that nature. And there's a line item in the app where you can put for doctor's appointment, for COVID, or for whatever. And that way, maybe we could journal some of those costs for transportation to the grant that we have. So it could be a win-win for everybody. But it would take a presentation from Uber. It would take some type of coordination from somebody. It would take some type of coordination, but once we build it into the Uber system and we highlight what the marketing code is, Uber will be able to manage it itself, and then at the end of the month spit out a plan when they send us a bill so that we can be able to see everything drawn down. So I do think that that's something, if we're choosing to pause or cancel, we have to be able to continue to meet our residents' needs, especially in COVID, especially because we don't have any transportation like the bus that comes in town until we figure out our plan.
Thank you, Councilmember Rao. Councilmember Lundy, I believe you had a...
I can yield after.
Okay,
she responds.
Councilmember Blunt.
I'm hoping that this bus thing works. I'm hoping that we all come to the table and it do work. Because that Uber, how you just explained it, that's a lot. That's a lot. But again, I'll be willing to listen to a presentation. But I'm hopeful that we can come to some type of solution and really use the bus. Because I do understand there's COVID money that we can go back and get lost revenue. But again, I don't handle that part. That's Vito's part. So if it is, if we can get that lost money back, then we can carry it out through the budget year. So again, that's just thinking. I don't do the figures. So
Thank you, Councilmember Blunt. Councilmember Lundy.
Well, I think this is all great. This is really good. And so I love the fact that, Councilmember Rao was explaining how the technology piece and the administrative piece is going to be handled up front. So that's a good thing too. And then first of all, I want to say thank you, Councilwoman Blunt, for all the work that you're doing on this project. The only thing that I wanted to say too is that I would like to see us open up the interest to get better costs. Councilmember Rao talked about the Uber. So when we do the PO or however we do it, I would like to see us put a term in there, and we can open it up to send it out to other people if we decide to go and have alternatives other than the bus.
yeah, I guess once we get together.
Yeah, right, because, not knowing, see, like we've been in this forever and going on and 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 on when we didn't have it out. So maybe going forward, if we can have like a term when we do this purchase order with this company, whoever we're dealing with. But this is great. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lundy. So looks like that completes the discussion to be continued in the next meeting with the vote to pause, as you said, not stop, right, Councilmember Blunt?
Not stop.
The next item is on the American Rescue Plan Act, the position description that Councilmember Rao drafted. Councilmember Rao?
Thank you, Mayor James. So I had drafted a position description because I feel strongly that with the receipt of these millions of dollars, in addition to our current standing operating budget, that is way too much for Mr. Tonelli to be able to manage with his staff. And we do our own payroll. We have, different requests that come in as it relates to our events, and he's trying to make sure we cut checks. We don't have the bandwidth to manage additional right now internally with our current staff. And so because I've worked in grants management for the last 7 years, I facilitate right now up to $54 million for the District of Columbia's block grant, mental health and substance abuse. I have learned that we could really use grant funds and our administrative costs to be able to pay for a grant administrator. So it is a time-sensitive position that's only going to be available on the basis of the time of the grant. So we can't make any promises to FTEs or staff, but it's grant-related. That it can be paid for by our administrative costs. And honestly, that was what saved my sanity in COVID, because I took my 10% administrative cost and I was able to get fiscal monitors, get a grant administrator, being able to funnel the work to an actual person that's in addition to my regular duties. That person can report to Mr. Tonelli, can report to Mr. McGrory, whomever it can report to. We just need a body in here to be able to manage this project, because guess what, guys? The money is here. And we have needs, and they will be responsible for writing the subcontracts. They will be for tracking the dollars on a regular basis, working with Mr. Tonelli to give us an adequate burn rate on a weekly basis of what we're expending, what we are getting. It'll be a person to manage all aspects, and if we get a competitive salary, we can get a professional in here that does this on a regular basis, that can be able to work through these grant issues. Other municipalities are doing it in our state. Other cities are doing it across the country. And when we attend those National League of City conference calls, and other cities are hiring staff, and I really think that it would behoove us to hire a staff. I'm thinking too, but I'll settle with whatever my colleagues and Mr. Tonelli, Mr. McGrory feels that we need. We need a grant manager, in my opinion, to funnel and write it, and then we need somebody to manage the fiscal side, because this is going to come with a whole set of different responsibilities. So.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Rao. And I know I'll come over to you next, Councilmember Mendoza, but when you have proposed the town hall sessions and we were talking about the nuts and bolts of this, that's the reason I suggested it's important to have complete separate staff from our regular FTEs, because this money has to be tracked so accurately. We cannot make mistakes with this level of funding. And so I know we had talked about it several months ago, and really the idea was that, as you said, the executive level person, but then also some admin support who could help with the day-to-day operations as well, just to make sure there's checks and balances and provide the necessary reporting so that we stay compliant with the Department of Treasury. But Councilmember Mendoza, I want to come over to you.
Well, I mean, this is a different situation, but it's the same idea. So one time we did that, we went and hired this lady named Lisa Lincoln, and it was for weatherizations, and that's how we got the solar panels and the pavers out there. And then after we hired her for like once, and after that we had a police officer that really got into it, and he became the grant writer. And it came to a point where he, for the whole Prince George's County, we were managing all the grants from MEMA, and so his salary, for the most part, was paid by the grant, because it covers like a 10-15% the management. But then we got a new town administrator, and there was clash between those two. So then the police officer opted to retire because the town administrator didn't want that person doing that. And then the chief at the time didn't think it was a police thing. So at the end, we lost the person, but we used to get grants, thousands and thousands of dollars every year. So it get to a point where, like somebody was saying that there's money left over. They would call him and say, hey, we got some money left over. Just send us a letter and you guys get it. It became a point where we just had money for the whole county. But, you know, some people didn't agree with the person, so there was a clash and then the person left. So it's a good idea. I mean, sometimes you start small and before you know it, we just got to be able to be ready if it grows to grow with it and not to try to kill it again, because sometimes there are people that can't handle other people's success, so you get killed.
Thank you, Councilmember Mendoza. Councilmember Lundy, and I do want to call out because I know we have our officer back there for the presentation, so just want to be sensitive to the time, but go ahead.
No, excuse me, I just wanted to, thank you, Madam Mayor, just wanted to echo Councilmember Mendoza. That's exactly what I was going to bring up about these persons being paid through the grant. And so I just really appreciated your comments and your remarks, that's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Lundy. The next item
Mayor,
is,
I just want to
sorry, go ahead, Mr.
If I could just
McGrory.
interject.
Yeah.
You had mentioned time checks, and we do have two people online here, Justin McNeil and John Muller, who are available and standing by to give a presentation as well. They've been allotted 5 minutes on the agenda, and I think have some PowerPoint slides. So just wanted to make you aware of that as well.
That's why I started looking at the clock. So let's jump on down to LEOPS with Officer Ryan Harris, who is here with us. And then we've got the free English classes, and then we'll get over to the history. Okay, so Councilmember Rout will yield to the history next. After you, go ahead, Harris, and then after you.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to make this quick. This is an abbreviated presentation on the law enforcement officer pension system. And the first thing you might see, law enforcement officer pension system, this is specific for law enforcement. And some people might question why law enforcement need a specific pension system, so we'll go over some of those details. It boils down to the large amount of on-the-job stress and negativity health impacts of police. These include cardiovascular disease, obesity, suicide, sleeplessness, cancer, and back and joint pain. Look at a small case study here. This is Chief Philip O'Donnell. He passed away on August 31st of this year. After serving 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, receiving 3 Purple Hearts, and more than 50 years of career in law enforcement, Chief O'Donnell passed away. He was the Chief of Police for the City of Glen Arm Police Department, and was set to officially retire 1 day before he passed away. Technical difficulties here, apologize. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember.
My pleasure.
Okay. So what effects does this career have on our Bladensburg police officers? We carry a minimum of 30 pounds of gear every day on our body, which leads to physical health impacts. We sacrifice holiday and family time gatherings with our family. Has a huge effect on our family life impact. And we're exposed to violence and disturbed reality on a regular basis, which affects our mental health. Presently, the police officers from town of Bladensburg are offered what's called the State Employees and Teachers Pension System from the town. A little bit about the system. The State Employees Pension System is offered to every single employee in the town of Bladensburg, every single full-time employee, including our police officers. The Law Enforcement Officer Pension System was established in 1990 to address these on-job related stress factors and health factors on law enforcement. Members of the Law Enforcement Officer Pension System is available to certified police officers employed by state, county, and municipal agencies who have elected to join this system. To date, the town is not currently elected to join the system. A little bit about retirement requirements for each system. In the current state employees pension system, an employee must have their age plus time of service equal 90. If an employee starts here at the age of 21, they can retire at 55 and a half after working 34 and a half years. If they're 25, they can retire at the age of 57 and a half after working 32 and a half years. And if they're 30, they can retire at the age of 60 after working 30 years. For the law enforcement officer pension system, a police officer can retire after 25 years of service, regardless of any other requirements. If the town were to decide to join LEOPS, there's a set policies from the state that they need to do. They need to determine eligibility to join the system, submit an application to the retirement agency, request a preliminary evaluation, an action has to be taken by the governmental body. Bladensburg employees have a choice to opt out or enroll. It would submit of enrollment information to the Maryland State Retirement Agency, enter into a participation agreement, and then have a final evaluation. Determining the eligibility to join the system. The town of Bladensburg must determine if it's eligible to join the system. So, a PGU, a participating governmental unit that is currently operates in the state system, may elect to join a second state system if the first plan, which would be the state employee system, requires members to contribute at the same rate to the members' contribution rate to the second system. In short is, as long as the state employee system and LEOPS have the same contribution rate, which is 7%, and they both meet that requirement, we are eligible to join. The town of Bladensburg also has to prove its employees to participate in this plan. We would submit an application. Must complete and submit an application for participation on before September 1st of the year prior to joining. The state only allows new agencies to start effective July 1st of the year. So begin July 1st of 2022, an application had to be submitted by September 1st of 2021. Request a preliminary evaluation. The system's actuaries must perform a preliminary articulate evaluation to determine the town of Bladensburg's cost of participation. This cost of performing the evaluation is an expense the town of Bladensburg and they will bear regardless of if they decide to participate or not. The state determines the cost is approximately $5,000 to $6,700. To request a preliminary evaluation, the town must notify the retirement agency in writing no later than November 1st of 2021 for a July 1st, 2022 entry. Employees may only transfer their time into that new system on July 1st, as we just talked about. And the first valuation is preliminary based on the previous year's valuation. Payroll information, stuff like that goes into effect. For the accuracy to develop an estimate, the governmental unit must provide the retirement agency with certain demographic data for the employees eligible to enroll in the system if the town of Bladensburg decides to participate. It has to be an action taken by the governmental body. After reviewing the preliminary evaluation results and the estimated cost to join the system, the town of Bladensburg can do the following. Present the options of joining to its employees, at which time 60% of employees need to petition to become members of that system. The town council must pass a formal resolution authorizing the participation in that system. The resolution must be submitted to the retirement agency on or before May 1st, 2022 to meet the July 1st joining deadline. Employees are then given an option to opt out. If your employees haven't elected to participate in the system, this decision is a one-time irrevocable election. Employees should be given at least 2 weeks to make their decision. Submission of employee enrollment information. The town of Bladensburg must submit to the retirement agency no later than May 15th all required documents to ensure the enrollment of all eligible employees and to initiate timely payroll reporting once the government body has decided to join the system and at least 60% of its employees have voted in support. On or before May 15th, the retirement agency must receive the following information. A properly completed, signed, and notarized information for all employees in the government unit who have indicated through a revocable election described above, application for membership, a designation of beneficiary, and proof of date of birth. A participation agreement. On or about July 1st, The governmental unit and the system will enter into a written participation agreement which sets forth the calculation and cost of participation and the responsibilities of the participating government unit. Not all costs are due at one time. So the state will set forth if there's a cost to join, they will give that, and they can enter into a payment plan. It is not a one-time upfront cost if the town were to decide to do this, if there is a cost. Then there's a final valuation. The final valuation will be performed by the actuary several months after the effective date to adjust to finalized cost of participation. The town will also be responsible for the expense of the final valuation, which again is $5,6,700. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Officer Harris, and for the residents. We did have a listening session back in August with the staff to hear some of their concerns, and the loudest one that was most urgent for the officers in particular was the request for the LEOPS program. So the council did authorize TA McGrory to get the application in for the valuation. So that has happened so far. Councilmember Rout, were you going to say? Oh, okay. So we did want to just notify the public that application has been submitted and is moving forward. Mr. McGrory, are there any other updates with respect to the process?
No, I put a piece of correspondence in there from the Maryland State Retirement System. Mr. Ashland sent me back a note on August 30th. I had submitted the forms. And he wrote back and said the process starts with a participating governmental unit application, which is the form that I had in fact submitted to him. So I had requested some guidance on completing that form. He said you have until September through November to do the forms. So he was harried at the moment with other priorities, and because I believe for new entrants into the overall system, that September 1st deadline is a hard one. For institutions like us that are transitioning from within the state system to add LEOPS potentially, that deadline is extended out to November 1st. So I am still anticipating getting guidance from him, and what I would ask at the open meeting is that the town council formalize its guidance to fund the cost of the actuarial study and direct me to complete the PGU application to initiate that process.
You broke up at the end. Formally give guidance for moving forward with the application, and then you mentioned a second thing, but you trailed off at the end.
To authorize, so funding the actuarial study and submitting the PGU application to initiate LEOPS. And I've just tried to pull up here. Is that you? Are you on there or am I? That's you. Okay. Oh, you know what? I probably did it in the...
So at this time, we do want to bring up our special guests. We have a presentation, which is an invitation to contribute to a book that is going to be published called The Lost History of Frederick Douglass in Prince George's County. So, Mr. McGrory, do you have our guests there? Let me mute so we don't get feedback.
So, Mr. Muller and Mr. McNeil, I think I've got you on the screen in this room. May I share the screen? Yes, I think you can, but I think Rick, our technology guy in the cabinet, may have to give you permission for that. Oh, there you are. Okay, you're on camera. And we will have a... So Rick, we've got some feedback through the mayor's mic, I think. So gentlemen, we've been through this before with the hybrid meeting in which we have participants in the room and participants from outside. So what Rick's going to have to do is turn off our microphones to allow you, hopefully, to present. And I'll stop talking so that can happen. you can hear me, gentlemen, which one of you will be presenting, Justin or John?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, John. John will be presenting from his screen.
Yeah, I have the screen. I'll be sharing the PowerPoint, and Justin and I will both be narrating. Okay, here we go.
All right, give him a second, John, to get that get those mics turned off in their room.
Sure.
So we don't have reverb. It sounds like we're good to go.
Okay, there we go.
Perfect.
Well, first off, Judson and I just want to sincerely thank the mayor, council, Mr. McRory, for making time on the agenda tonight. We'll try to speed through this. It's about 11 slides. Can you see on your end the cover screen?
They're good.
Okay, great. Okay, so real short, Mr. McNeil and I have been working on a booklet, Lost History of Frederick Douglass in Prince George's County. He spoke at a political rally, and we will just quickly go through this information this evening. This is a draft of the front cover and the back cover. And it just describes that Frederick Douglass was very involved in Maryland local politics, and a rally in Bladensburg brought him to Spa Grove. So there is a statue of Frederick Douglass at MGM National Harbor, right next to President Lincoln. There's a statue of Frederick Douglass on the campus of the University of Maryland in College Park. So there are two statues of Frederick Douglass in Prince George's County, but the history of Frederick Douglass in Prince George's County is currently unknown, unrecognized, and it's not part of the kind of the state Frederick Douglass tourism infrastructure. So Mr. McNeil and I are hoping that the publication of this booklet can help to kind of put this history properly in Bladensburg and in Prince George's County.
Right, like John said, the Honorable Frederick Douglass has his likeness, prominently featured 2 times in Prince George's County in the form of 2 public statues. So what we kind of want to get into is how his history and the history of the Plummer family, currently unknown and unrecognized. There's no short of potential here to to recognize this history and give it its proper standing within Prince George's County history, Maryland state history overall. So in 1880. In the 1880 campaign season, U.S. Marshal Frederick Douglass was an active surrogate and platform speaker, stumping for the Republican Party, including delivering a high-profile address in Bladensburg's Spa Grove in support of the candidacy of Dr. William R. Wilmer for Congress from Maryland's 5th Congressional District, utilizing newspaper accounts, letters, archival materials never published before. The lost history of Frederick Douglass in Prince George's County emerges and comes to life in this groundbreaking booklet, which John and I have been working on. Connected through local and national politics, educational institutions, including Wayland Seminary, Howard University, DC Public Schools, the Colored Orphans Home, activist networks, association memberships, as well as marriage. The relationship of the Plummer family of Washington, D.C. and Prince George's County and the Douglass family provides new and lasting insights into the dynamics of post-Civil War communal and political life within Prince George's County, Maryland.
And just as an administrative note, the Frederick Douglass National Historic Site is a very short distance from Bladensburg. Frederick Douglass's house in the Anacostia neighborhood on W Street is a National Park Service site. So it's kind of a nice connection. It's Douglass has these connections right along the Anacostia River.
Right, it's there, right. It presents another opportunity for, you know, cross promotional, cross programming, all types of opportunities of that nature.
This is an 1878 map of Bladensburg. Some town council members, mayor, town administrator may already know this. This may hang in the police office. I'm not sure, but this is a pretty well-known local map. And this is where Frederick Douglass spoke in September of 1880. It's known as Spa Grove. There was a prominent spring in Bladensburg up until the early 1900s. I believe 2017, the county or the Prince George's County Park and Planning Division was doing, they were looking at Spa Grove, and I'll show a photo of where it currently is today. It's kind of in an indirect way been preserved. These are two young Douglasonians canvassing the lost history of Frederick Douglass in Bladensburg.
Gentlemen, excuse me for interjecting. John, I'm sorry, but we have a 7 o'clock meeting we need to get started. What we would propose, and I apologize for your straddling this time slot, I can quickly send you the agenda for our 7 o'clock meeting, and you can chime on with that meeting if you'd be so kind.
Sure. Do you want us to just pause or restart, or what would you like us to do?
Pause. Yeah, just
Okay.
you can hold there. We're going to close out this meeting and we'll rejoin another meeting. I'll send you a link to that. Once we go through the formal opening processes of that meeting, you'll be invited to continue, I think. Is that okay? Yep.
Is that good for you, Justin?
Yeah, I'll send you in a bit.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that works.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll do pause.
So we will just add that when we go to approve the agenda. We'll add the presentation to continue, but we do need to honor our rules and start our meeting on time. So with that, Councilmember Rao. Okay. Thank you.
To adjourn our current meeting.
Okay, there's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Councilmember Blunt. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye. Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. The work session is adjourned.
No, I'm gonna just, we're gonna